Bolivian social and political organisations continue to denounce the electoral court's decision to postpone the date of the general elections. The Caribbean community began a virtual security conference this Monday to analyse issues in the region in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. India's Prime Minister officially opened 3 new COVID-19 testing facilities in New Delhi, Mumbai and Kolkata this Monday. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. Bolivian social and political organisations continue to denounce the electoral court's decision to postpone the date of the general elections. They're calling on the Supreme Electoral Tribunal to comply with the previous agreement that set September 6 as the date for the country's general elections. Popular and indigenous organisations are preparing to hold protests this week to add to the pressure. Despite this scenario, the president of the Electoral Tribunal, Salvador Romero, has reiterated that October 18th is now the definitive date for the vote. The elections in Bolivia have been postponed 3 times because of the pandemic, as the de facto authorities work to tighten and extend their grip on power. The movement towards Socialism Party has announced that its leaders are being persecuted in order to prevent their participation in the elections. And inmates at Bolivia's San Sebastian prison in the western city of Cochabamba protested this Monday over the lack of coronavirus safety measures. The prisoners are demanding government medical assistance given the rapid spread of COVID-19 across the country. The protesters called on authorities to intervene as the number of cases rises in Cochabamba, stressing that they have no access to doctors or medicines. Bolivia has officially reported more than 2,500 COVID-19 deaths and over 69,000 cases among its population of 11 million. Brazilian health workers this Monday urged the International Criminal Court to investigate President Jair Bolsonaro's government for crimes against humanity over its handling of the coronavirus pandemic. The case was presented in The Hague by a coalition of unions, which represent more than 1 million healthcare workers across Brazil. In a statement, the unions accused Bolsonaro's far-right administration of being criminally negligent in its mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic, thus risking the lives of healthcare professionals and the Brazilian population. Secretary for the Americas region of the UNI Global Union Federation, Marcio Monsani, stated that the Bolsonaro administration must be held accountable for its response to the pandemic. And more than 87,000 COVID-19 deaths have now been reported in Brazil. According to the Brazilian Health Ministry, over 600 new fatalities were confirmed in the past 24 hours. Over 24,000 new cases have also been reported since Sunday, which means that Brazil has now confirmed more than 2.4 million COVID-19 cases. The most affected state is Sao Paulo, with over 21,000 COVID-19 deaths, followed by Rio de Janeiro with nearly 13,000. When a novel coronavirus closed Guatemala's schools in mid-March, teacher Gerardo Ixcoy invested his savings in a second-hand tricycle. He transformed the tricycle into a mobile classroom with plastic sheets to protect against virus transmission, a whiteboard and a small solar panel, which powers the audio player he uses for some of the lessons he teaches. Each day, the 27-year-old pedals among the cornfields of Santa Cruz del Quiche to offer individual classes to his 6th grade students. The initiative was born of necessity, as illiteracy in the area is about 42% and only about 13% of homes have internet access.
I wanted to help them because they lack technological tools, such as computers, printers, internet. That's where the idea to take the knowledge to their doors comes from, and watching out for COVID-19, of course. Things have changed a lot because now I'm not receiving normal classes. Teacher Lalito only comes for a little while to teach me, but I learn a lot. When they saw me pedaling in, at first they laughed, but they soon realized I was helping them. And parents were also very pleased. I believe they are my engine, the fuel to keep on pedaling to help them learn. In the same way, they have taught me a lot. They are teaching me how to teach.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced that his government is considering two offers to buy the presidential plane, which he says is an example of the excesses that were committed under previous administrations. The plane will be sold outright, and the president noted there are now two bidders, one of whom is offering a mix of cash and medical equipment for the jet. That buyer has already put down a $1 million deposit and signed an initial contract, but the president explained that last week another all-cash buyer emerged. The Mexican government estimates that the plane is worth $120 million. It was purchased in 2012 for about $200 million.
There are already these possible buyers, and that money, and also what is obtained through the raffle, is for public health. This plan is an example of the excesses that were committed. The purpose of holding this press conference with the airliner is to make known to the people of Mexico how the country was poorly governed, how there were luxuries in the government through the neoliberal period.
The Cuban Health Ministry presented an update on COVID-19 figures in the country this Monday.
As a result of the analysis of these 3,212 samples, 37 people in our country tested positive for COVID-19, positive for SARS-CoV-2. A total of 250,415 COVID-19 tests have been done in Cuba, out of which 2,532 have tested positive, representing 1.01%.
And the National Director of Epidemiology at the Cuban Public Health Ministry also highlighted the number of recovered patients.
Today, we gave 2 discharges here in Havana. Compared to the number of admissions, it is not a positive balance. 93% of COVID-19 patients in our country have recovered from the disease. We are talking about 2,351 people.
And we'll be right back after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Caribbean community this Monday began a virtual security conference to analyse issues in the region in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. The conference, the first of its kind to be held by CARICOM member states, will analyse the challenges, impact, implications and experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic on regional security. The 4-day conference is hosted by the CARICOM Implementation Agency for Crime and Security under the title Securing Our Community Within the Era of COVID-19 and Beyond. The objective is to identify best practices that can be applied to similar situations in the future. The virtual meeting will bring together experts in the field, government officials, academics and representatives of the private sector and civil society. The agenda includes debates on peace, security and development, criminality and organised crime, cybersecurity, borders, gender violence, climate change and resilience, and maritime security. In Trinidad and Tobago, 1 additional person tested positive for COVID-19 overnight, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to 148. According to official figures, the country has now conducted over 6,000 COVID-19 tests, while the number of fatalities remains at 8.
The presumption that the school plant has the facility to isolate, that there is the presumption that someone from the Ministry of Health would arrive on the compound in a timely manner. Well, at this point in time, Tutor stands to be guided by the Ministry of Health's pronouncements. Good? And this is why we are saying that there must be proper consultation. Continue to advise our members to take care of themselves and use the precautions. And if necessary, we will then have a discussion with our members on what course of action we will follow.
Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, accepted a donation of essential medical supplies for Caribbean community members from the World Health Organization and the Jack Ma Foundation. Mottley stated that the surgical and N95 masks would greatly assist Caribbean governments in protecting their frontline workers.
What's important is that we not only have access, which we didn't as a small region as CARICOM on our own, but that we are also looking to be able to procure at prices that are usually only available for much larger countries and populations. And therefore, a St. Kitts with 40,000 people will have the same access as a Nigeria with 200 million people. And that is the fundamental policy space that we've negotiated to make a difference to the people of the region.
Also in Barbados, former Prime Minister Owen Seymour Arthur passed away this Monday at the age of 70. Seymour Arthur, who served as Barbados' fifth Prime Minister, was hospitalised in mid-July with heart complications. The former Prime Minister led the country for an unprecedented 3 consecutive terms from 1994 to 2008, having served as a Member of Parliament from 1984 to 2013. According to Barbadian authorities, a period of national mourning will be observed for 3 days, with the national flag flown at half-mast. Chinese authorities on Monday morning entered the US consulate in Chengdu after ordering the mission to close late last week in response to a US order to force the closure of Beijing's consulate in Houston.
This morning, the US personnel left the compound as required by China, and the US Consulate General in Chengdu was closed. Chinese authorities then entered through the front entrance and took it over. Demanding the closure of the US consulate in Chengdu and taking over the premises is China's legitimate and necessary response to the unjustified US act of closing Chinese consulate in Houston and breaking into the compound. What China has done conforms to international law, the basic rule of international relations and diplomatic practices. The current situation of China-US relations is not what China wants to see, and US is responsible for all this. We once again urge the US to correct its wrong decisions immediately and create necessary conditions to bring the bilateral relationship back on track.
The Director General of the World Health Organization has noted that nearly 16 million coronavirus cases have now been reported to the UN Health Agency, as well as more than 600,000 deaths worldwide. On Thursday, the WHO Director will convene the organisation's emergency committee as part of a procedural requirement 6 months after the declaration of a public health emergency of international concern. The Director General stressed that strong political leadership, education to raise awareness of the risks, increased testing, hygiene and physical distancing measures have proven effective in several countries that have carefully followed guidelines to fight the virus.
COVID-19 has changed our world. It has brought people, communities, and nations together and driven them apart. It has shown what humans are capable of, both positively and negatively. We have learned an enormous amount, and we're still learning. But although our world has changed, the fundamental pillars of the response have not. As we mark 6 months since the declaration of the global health emergency, the COVID-19 pandemic is illustrating that health is not a reward for development. It's the foundation of social, economic, and political stability. We are not prisoners of the pandemic. Every single one of us can make a difference. The future is in our hands.
Executive Director of Emergencies, and Dr.
Julian Assange's lawyer, Baltasar Garzón, arrived on Monday at the Spanish National Court in Madrid to testify in the espionage case against his client. The case surrounds the alleged espionage activities against Assange while he was residing in the Ecuadorian embassy in London between 2015 and 2018 by the Spanish security company UC Global. The defence states that Assange was spied on in multiple ways, including taking his fingerprints from a glass and stealing a dirty nappy to conduct DNA tests after he was visited by his children. Fidel Narvaez, former consul of Ecuador in London, and Assange's partner Stella Morris have also been summoned as witnesses.
Staff to focus on a group of Assanges.
At least 100 migrants arrived on the Italian island of Lampedusa on Monday, which continues to see an influx of migrant arrivals. Italian Coast Guard officials said they had picked up 44 people during an operation in the Mediterranean Sea. Another 70 migrants, believed to be Tunisian nationals, also travelled to the island in their own vessels, according to officials. A facility which usually houses up to 95 people has held up to 1,000 migrants over the past week. A firefighter was killed and 4 injured in a traffic accident while fighting a forest fire in central Portugal that could continue to rage through Wednesday. According to civil protection authorities, firefighter Diogo Dias was killed this weekend in a traffic accident in the context of fighting a fire that broke out in Oleiros, central Portugal. Meanwhile, on Sunday, more than 700 firefighters and 14 water bomber planes fought the fire that broke out on Saturday evening before spreading to the Castelo Branco region, 200 kilometres north of the capital, Lisbon. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday officially opened 3 new COVID-19 testing facilities in New Delhi, Mumbai and Kolkata. According to his office, each testing facility is capable of analysing as many as 10,000 tests a day. Speaking via video conference, Modi claimed India had taken the right decisions at the right time during the pandemic and was in a controlled situation compared to other countries. India's chief medical research agency says the country tested over 500,000 samples for COVID-19 on Sunday. The almost 50,000 new cases reported on Monday brought India's nationwide tally to beyond 1.4 million, representing the world's 3rd highest after the United States and Brazil.
Millions of citizens of the country have been fighting with the coronavirus pandemic bravely. Today, we are launching a high-tech testing facility. The efforts of West Bengal, Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh will be further strengthened in their fight against the corona pandemic. Friends, the right decision we're taking at the right time has resulted in our country being in a far controlled situation compared to other countries. The rate of deaths are far lower in our country compared to many big countries. In January, we had just 1 center for corona testing, and today 1,300 labs are working around the country. Today in India, we're conducting more than 500,000 tests a day, and efforts are on to take the testing ability to 1 million a day in the next few weeks.
More than 80,000 cases of COVID-19 have now been reported across the African continent. According to information from the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention, the continent has reported a COVID-19 death toll of over 17,000. South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, Ghana, Algeria and Morocco remain the worst-hit nations. China's 16th Peacekeeping Engineering Unit to Sudan's Darfur region held an oath-taking rally on Monday before their expedition to East Africa to fulfill a 5-month mission. The detachment mainly comprises soldiers selected from an engineering brigade of the 82nd Group Army of the Central Theatre Command of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. The unit has drawn up a disease prevention and control plan based on the COVID-19 situation in the mission area. This is the first time the brigade will conduct a peacekeeping mission abroad. The former president of the Central African Republic, Francois Bozize, announced last weekend that he's running in the December presidential election. The country has been ravaged by civil war since his ousting in 2013. Activists of Bozize's Croix Noire Croix party have been meeting in the capital, Bangui, since Friday, and the announcement was widely expected. The veteran politician took power following a 2003 coup before being overthrown himself 10 years later by Michel Djoto-Dia, head of the mainly Muslim Seleka rebel coalition in a predominantly Christian country. Since then, the landlocked nation has spiraled further into violence.
Il s'exprime ici à quelques semaines de l'entrée des rebelles à Bangui.
In Lebanon, 168 new COVID-19 cases and 4 more deaths were recorded over the past 24 hours. According to the Health Ministry, the new cases take the country's overall tally since February 21st to more than 3,000, while the death toll now stands at 51. Meanwhile, 137 patients were hospitalized for coronavirus over the past 24 hours, including 34 who were admitted into intensive care units. In Iraq, 2 demonstrators died and several dozen were injured during clashes with security forces in Baghdad. Thousands of Iraqis demonstrated in Tahrir Square in downtown Baghdad and other cities across the country to protest against ongoing power outages and corruption. Ali al-Bayati, member of Iraq's High Commission for Human Rights, said that security forces violently attacked protesters who are demanding improved power services. The 2 victims are the first since Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi took office in May, having promised to dialogue with protesters.
They beat us with weapons. They say it is forbidden to kill, arrest, abduct, nothing is allowed. We stayed for 6 hours with them. They even prevented ambulances from reaching the people who were killed and wounded. God willing, today if the youth of the October Revolution do not get released, we will continue. We will keep going and we will escalate again. Our youth are injured, but we will remain intense and we will not retreat. The ruling of Mustafa al-Kadhimi does not differ from the government of.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss and thank you for watching.